Right, forgot it, sorry.
When does that decision have to be made? And you're saying before the end of the fiscal year, correct? So would it be a recommendation of the committee then to, ask the Ed Services Committee to kind of determine what they would like to move forward with?
Can I put one more caveat on it, which is, it would be nice if we wrapped it all up in this 1 year. You can at any time, as a board, assign any amount of fund balance to any project you want. Right, and so if you don't do it this year, it doesn't mean you can't do it in the future. It's just easier to recall and remember the discussion points. The sooner we do it, than the later we do it.
Well, and then that also becomes a situation where if we're in such a desperate need for, fund balance in the near future, how much of a priority is it? Because that's where the question is that.
That was
does
my
mean
question, Craig, yeah.
Hear back more of our staff?
It just gets into a discussion of, are we still on a pathway to defer curriculum, defer maintenance, defer staffing, other things,
Right.
professional development. And the thing that Sarah and I would absolutely say is, yes, we absolutely are. We are, well past our ability to maintain an operating budget. And so we could set it aside for curriculum, but really, what good does it do to set it aside for curriculum if we can't operate?
So what
Well,
it sounds like I'm
curriculum
hearing.
doesn't operate in a vacuum either,
I know,
because it's curriculum, training,
yes, I mean, all of that.
all of that together. There's a lot more than just the curriculum there.
Right, but what I'm hearing is that really we shouldn't commit to anything right now, when we have a lot of unanswered questions.
Correct.
That's why I said tonight's really premature to have that discussion.
Yeah. There's not like a deadline on it, right?
No,
Yeah.
no.
My
And
opinion.
again, even if we went past this year, we could still have the discussion at any point in time if you want.
Yeah.
But it just gets harder to explain why would we be talking about science and social studies curriculum and earmarking it. It's easy to do the link now to here's what we were going to do with the money. We ended up doing this instead because we didn't do option A, right? And we still wanted option A. Right, and so we had that money sitting here because we didn't do the Chromebook purchases, right? But the real reality that Sarah and I are saying is, it just takes our deficit, our planned deficit, down by the number of Chromebook purchases that we were gonna do anyway, because we put it into here, so.
It might-
And I'm sorry, Mike.
No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think the celebration here though is that the district was able to use all of the ESSER money,
Yeah.
which is great. And the vast majority of it was on new things, which if you look at other districts, it's not the way that a lot of districts spent it. They were filling deficits for the last 2 or 3 years. So I think that we were in a really nice position to be able to get new things, get that new curriculum, get the HVAC, all of those things done.
And maybe we can set that discussion off till after April on what we want to do with that money. April is gonna be kind of a hinge point, right? So.
And just took me a bit to find it, it was the August Ed Services. The curriculum review was Ed Services from that test. It laid out as to what Jenny's current plan is for curriculum review and when that expenditures might start hitting the budget. Thank you.
So if there's no. No.
And
Oh, go ahead.
I think it also bears to say, like, this amount of work did not get done in the vacuum. And Sarah, as well as Stacy, and especially Stacy, put a lot of work, time, effort, and energy in this, and I always wanna honor people for that work. Because that's not easy work on top of everything else they have to do in a day, and so I wanna say some appreciation to the business office and their team for getting that done, because it is a lot of work.
Thank you.
So congratulations to you and Stacy.
Yeah, it was Stacy. I mean, every single one of those moves had to be done through multiple layers, and she did that so many times, so she did good work.
Thank you, Stacey.
Yes.
Thank you, Sarah.
So speaking of April, why don't we move forward to referendum planning discussion?
Yes, I have 3 different documents loaded. 2 of them were in the administrative content. But the first one, I just wanted to share this 1-page flyer that Bear put out that gave a breakdown of the last elections referendum results. I thought it was just interesting to see the breakouts and what passed and what failed. 78% of the questions overall passed, which that's really good. I thought that was positive. And I also thought it was interesting to see that the recurring referendums passed at a pretty good rate as well, a little bit higher than non-recurring. But there was a lower number of them. And then you can see down here just the history from 2019 until now, how many referendums there have been, and it's certainly growing. I remember in 2022, we were all shocked at how many there were, and then you look in 2024, there were so many more again. It's just something that's growing and growing. The other oh, yes, sorry.
I mean, it's maybe a technical question. When a district issues debt, that's also a referendum question, is it not?
Yeah, so that would be like a facilities question,
Yeah,
some kind
capital.
of update.
Okay.
Mhm. And then I just put together like a what, why, and how for the rationale for this recurring $7 million.
Sorry, I just, follow up to Craig's on the other, the non-recurring. Is that always the same length of time on a non-recurring?
No.
You can vary that. It could be for 1 year or
Do
5 years.
6 years, 8
Right.
years, 2 years, 5 years.
Okay, that's not locked, that it has to be 5
You
years.
can
as far as
step it
state
up if
statute.
you want to, you can step it down if you want to.
Okay.
I mean, there's, I even saw a question that was, I don't know why they did it, but they said this much in this year, this much in this year, which was 2 years down the road, and this much in this year, which was 3 years down the road past that one. I was like, how are you gonna explain that to people?
Yeah.
But they just took their debt structure and what was falling off and tried to fill in the gaps, right? And it made it for a very confusing vote for people, to try to explain. But I've seen some very weird things.
Yeah, and it's always to try and level out the mill rate so that full
Right.
tax impact isn't upfront.
And that's why they did it though. That's
Yeah.
why they picked those years, so.
So the other document, the main thing I just wanted to point out is there's a graph at the bottom of that document, again, provided by Baird. And this kind of explains how we get to the 70-cent impact instead of a bigger impact. So the gray is what we're currently paying for debt service. And then you can see that it's increasing slightly, but it's so much lower in the upcoming years. And then it disappears entirely by 2032, I think that is. And so that's how we have the extra space there, so that impact is so much lower.
Operational referendum. what, why, how?
Administrative
Yeah.
guidelines.
Administrative content.
Administrative guidelines.
Got it. Okay.
And that's the second page. Well, why wouldn't I recommend the second page there?
Thank you.
So if we're gonna add 70 cents to the mill rate, right? That's what this does. We don't ask that in the question.
Right, it doesn't say that part in the question. It doesn't give the.
That's an educational piece that we have to continue to put out to people.
We can't put that in the question.
No.
No.
It changes. I think.
No, because, again, the mill rate is only the mill rate as far out as you can project the mill rate. And, saying that we don't know, property values and what's gonna go into property values and whether they're gonna rise, whether they're gonna fall, all these other things that help set the mill rate that would be inconsistent for people. They would be like, I mean, even educating people on it's gonna be approximately 70 cents. I wanna say approximately 70 cents because for some township, it may be more than the city, right? And so for me, I'm in Exonia Township. It may be a little bit more or a little bit less depending on how that portion of the school tax mixes with that portion of the township tax, right? And all of the other things that figures my mill rate out.
Yeah, that's my only concern
Portion.
with maybe jumping ahead, but my only concern the way the question is structured is because, it does not provide an idea of the impact to me within that question. So if I don't go to this sessions and I don't get the paper, you know, and I go to vote, and go, well, do I get the district $7 million or no? What does that mean to me? I don't know.
And that's why we're sharing, the best we can, the approximate impact to you based on a, you know, and I don't know exactly what we're gonna use, average home price or, you know,
Yeah.
$300,000 home,
300,
$400,000 home, whatever it is we're gonna use, right? To say, you know, approximately this much, or this much per 100,000, you know.
The other
But-
thing that's important in communicating, and I've learned this in other districts, is that it is based on the fair market value. And people will get really confused by that because
Yeah.
their assessed value might be a lot lower than that. Most everyone in this district's been reassessed as far as I know, so it should be pretty close, but still.
So,
So it's my understanding, if we move forward to the draft of the question, this is just a draft. This isn't what we're moving forward with or anything like that, just a sample draft question.
Yes, and it has really generic wording for the reason why. So it says for recurring purposes consisting of operational and maintenance expenses. That's really where the district has some leeway to change what you wanted to say.
yeah, and I would say one of the things that I think we should continue to add is to say something along the lines for recurring purposes, right, consisting of operational and maintenance program to maintain current programming levels or something like that, so that people understand. You know, we're doing it to maintain what we have, right? Not to do more. You know, I don't want people to think that, oh, we're doing an operational referendum, now you can give everybody a raise.
You're right.
No, that's not why we're doing it. We're doing it to maintain programming. Right?
That's no, I don't wanna go there.
I mean, however you guys wanna, you know, talk about that's part of what we're here to discuss tonight, because on Monday, you will have a resolution with your intent to go to referendum. In your intent, you have to say that what your intent is to go out for, which is $7 million on a recurring basis, right? And we'll have a simple language like that. Then in December, you'll get a finalized ballot from Quarles and Brady and Sarah's work to then finalize. You have to actually finalize that ballot language 70 days prior, at least 70 days prior. Now, December will be way more than 70 days prior to the April election. But you have to finalize that. So it's a two-step process. First, you have to share your intent to go out, and then you have to share your final ballot language. So we want to be pretty clear with the rest of the board on what our intent is come Monday.
Craig, did you have a question?
It was really, and I just wanted to try to unpack Sarah's comment about fair market value versus assessed value if I could, but
Good luck.
Yeah.
Not.
and how that really relates, and I just wanted to make sure I understood what she was saying. So you were saying that the mill rate is based on the fair market value, not the assessed value.
The tax rate is, right, so when you get your tax bill, people will get confused. When I guess the last time I worked on a referendum, it's been several years ago, and that district had not been reassessed recently. And so some of those gaps were really big. Like they would say, I'm assessed at 170, but their fair market value was 280. And so their tax rate was much higher than what their mental math was telling them it should be.
Right, but then yet. Okay.
You got the point that most of the town has been reassessed within the last few years. So,
So it should be
So
fair.
there's not big gaps there.
yeah.
Two questions related to language. It, to exceed the revenue limit specified in 129, 121 Wisconsin statutes. Exceed the revenue limit as specified. If that revenue limit changes, it doesn't contemplate that we would I recognize that that's backstory, it's confusion, it's more words. So we recognize that if the revenue limit changes, well, then we don't have to exceed it by $7 million. We only exceed it by 5 because they gave us an extra $400 per pupil or whatever that comes out. So that's baked in here and not said, but something that we're aware of, or oh, that's a question mark. That is the way to read that. If the state changes that statute and allows us to now raise 11,000 per student, but 11,500, well, the year that happens, we won't be getting 7 million. We'll only be getting whatever, 52 or 5.2. Is that correct?
That's correct. You can under levy. The only thing is if you under levy in one year, you can't go back up to 7 million in the following year.
Okay, so, okay, fair enough. I just.
So most school districts won't choose to under levy.
Okay,
Now,
Which one?
we did under levy our last year.
yes,
It was also the last year of that referendum and we under levied it.
okay,
But we did that because the assessments went up and the city was gonna, take the max of that assessment. We tried to do what we could to keep the taxes down in the city.
my part two is the same question, or this part two, it says. Exceed the revenue limit by 7 million. We didn't say up to 7 million. Because. We're gonna hit the 7 million, because if you say up to 7 million. We're not gonna go in it at 6.2, because then we're locked in at 6.2 from that point
And you
forward.
can't do it up to.
Then you can't do it up to, thank you.
You have to be, very straight with the public as to what the ask
Okay,
is.
yeah, I see the simplicity in the statement, but I see questions that aren't answered in that statement. So I just bring them up here so that we're aware of it.
Yeah, and we share with people that, should that happen, should the state come in with more money, we can always choose to under levy. And I think you heard me say that, somebody asked this question
Yeah.
actually at one of my briefings. I
Right.
said, we can do that. The only issue with that would be that then we are stuck at that levy limit. We can't go back, so.
And reassessments and things rolling on and off TIDs doesn't change anything. It changes how much the mill rate changes, but it
Right.
doesn't change the $7 million.
Yes,
Right, which is why you lock in on the 7, because a lot of other factors are gonna move around that we don't control.
yeah. Matter of fact, when we say 70 cents, we haven't baked in the tip that's coming off the books.
Yeah.
Because we can't unless we have it, right? We know it is. We don't know the final amount. We don't know what that's going to transition into, so we can't say that, but we know it's probably going to actually have lesser impact than the 70 cents on the mill rate. But we can't bake that into the question.
Yeah, and if you read the tiny print, which I'm struggling to do right now, they're baked in a 1% growth in property values going forward. And we haven't seen that low in a long time. Like even this year, we were like, oh, it's gonna be way lower, and it came in at 6%. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, it can go negative, but it's likely to be higher than 1.
Mhm.
Like you're adding the statement to maintain current program.
Yeah, because I don't want people to just think that we're just going out because.
And that's not in there right now, right, Fred?
It's not in there right now, and I would say you could just tack it on, again, purposes consisting of operational and maintenance expenses to maintain current programming levels.
So if that's the way it's phrased, does that mean that if you are getting that recurring referendum money and you start opening up additional programs and you're utilizing that referendum money, then you're outside of the bounds of what you're communicating to people who are voting? So then we would have an obligation to not open up additional programs.
No, that's not
Or how would
necessarily
that
true. We would probably be under the gun a little bit to explain why we're cutting programs if we all of a sudden started cutting.
Sure, Sam's question's valid, that if you're gonna
It's
say, it's-
disingenuous if we say to maintain level.
and then we had a program.
And then people are like, okay, so you're taking extra money out of my property taxes, I'm giving you extra money, and I thought it was because I wanted to make sure that my kid could still take the art classes they currently take, still take band classes.
Right.
Now you're offering
Baking.
basket weaving, I don't know, something else, and I love cooking classes.
I understand, yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, like, how does that play into that language?
How does that play into the, what did you subtract to get the ad
Well,
discussion?
I'm saying that, I mean, I understand that if we're 3 years down the line, things are going a lot better, just like economically across the board. We can always reduce the amount that we're actually taking. We can do that. I guess I'm just wondering about the way that that's being communicated to the people in the community and whether or not the people in the community are, how do I say it? I want to make sure I don't say it using the wrong words. I want to make sure that the people in the community aren't entering into an agreement that they will later feel like is not being honored appropriately, if that makes sense.
I want to say I agree with Sam on this one, in the sense that I don't think adding current services, or whatever the word was, adds much to the document, and it could paint you into a box should we want to switch something. But I think I read this as being consistent with operational maintenance costs, not expected, or quote unquote current. We leave out expected and current out of the document. But adding additional language to the end of this may not gain us anything, and only limits us to having to explain ourselves in the future.
Okay.
So we can throw those three words, yeah, we can throw those 3 words in and see how it plays. But I guess I understand Sam's logic on this one, and I tend to agree. I'd rather.
We fight that on a regular basis anyway, and I'm wondering if, why did you open this up? Well, we got a grant for that, and that's where this money is to
Yeah.
pay for it. We do this all the time. You know why, you guys got a deficit, you got no money, how did you add this program? Well, this money from over
Different
here,
pocket.
and we used it over here for this, and we do that. I understand where you're going with that, my concern is that it, as written, it is, not that it's bland, but and again, maybe it's the educational piece and we don't need that in the question, but we don't have the, if this doesn't pass, as part of the question, maybe we don't need that, maybe that's not that's not how you write a question like that. We do that.
I think the informational sessions that are gonna go along with this would answer that.
So what if we said this, if we said for recurring purposes consisting of operational, instructional, and maintenance expenses?
But yeah, I don't mind instructional, people should read it as operational, but.
I understand,
Yeah.
but some people won't.
No.
Some people think operational is just nuts and bolts, and, that they don't necessarily know that that's.
Yeah, those adjectives doesn't bother me, it's just the tense of are those the current expenses? Expected expenses?
Prior expenses.
Expanded expenses?
It's,
Yeah, I just wouldn't want to dip my toe in there if we didn't have to.
Greg,
Yeah, I think.
I see your wheels spinning.
Yeah, I agree with David. I'm indifferent on adding that extra word, anything that.
And I don't know, does Bear ever run these past focus groups, or they just have one lawyer sitting in a room, or an accountant, putting this together and saying, yeah, I agree with this?
No.
Or they run it by a focus group and says, Fred, would you be more likely to vote for this one or vote for this one? How about you? I mean, they're experts, but how do they litmus check these questions?
They don't, they simply say, what are your needs? Because the legal point is, we have to tell people what your needs are, what the money's going for. That's all they care about.
Yeah,
is
Barrett
us.
says call quarrels.
Yeah,
That's what they
and Barrett
say.
says call quarrels.
Okay, so
Quarrels
Quarles wrote this, right? I did say attorneys, that was right the first time, not
Right.
accountants.
But quarrels will say to us, like, your legal obligation is to tell people what it's for. So tell us what it's for,
But
and we will write a question.
I would go back to Sarah's first slide and ask Baird, okay, of these questions, was it just the sentiment of the communities that got them passed? Or was it the way they were worded that got them passed? And I'm not trying to be devious, I'm just trying not to be confusing.
And
Yeah.
Raise them this way, you get, this percentage more.
Right.
Approval rate, somebody's gotta have done that.
Maybe, we can ask Quarles that.
Yeah,
Baird,
yeah.
Baird did that.
Quarles writes, I think, just about every ballot question
They
out
do,
there, right?
yes, they do.
And I think what they will say is the easier it is for you to explain,
Mhm.
the easier it is for people to understand, the higher percentage of passing rate you'll have. It's when people don't understand A, what's it for, or B, how you're getting to that. Which is why you saw, again, recurring referendums tend to pass at a higher rate than non-recurring, because non-recurring, you have to explain to them how many years and blah, 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 you know.
Good point.
And if it's accelerating at this amount of rate, why, you know, whereas if you just say, listen, expenses have gotten more.
The KISS principle, this works for me.
This is the simplest one that I've ever seen, and I do this, and I feel sometimes like I have to read them 10 times to try and make any sense of them, and I don't know if that's deliberate.
A yes
But it's
means no.
frustrating as a voter, I really find it frustrating, and then I have done the step up ones. And the question that you get all the time is people add them together, so it's like, we're starting at 7.5, 8, and people are like, you want $40 million? No, it's very hard to communicate those.
I think the question is written in a pretty easily understandable way. You know, I think that makes sense, the way that I'm reading it at least. I think again, the only question that I have, and that goes more to communication, is the responsibility to the taxpayers and to just in general, the people in the district, like the understanding, we're not asking for this so that we can go wild and keep on building stuff. We're not just asking you guys to give us to give us money to pour in, to give us an investment. We're asking you guys to help us because we're dealing with economic circumstances, which are much larger than just the district.
If we don't get this, we're going to have to cut programming and staff.
Yeah.
Or go bankrupt, and the state says we can't go bankrupt.
And that's why I think the question will eventually come up, like, okay, so what if in 3 years you don't need $7 million to maintain the programming that you have? I'm not saying that that will be the case, but I think that question will come up. And I think that we need to have an answer, and a good answer for people when they ask that question.
The answer is the school board can choose to under levy at any time.
But those are,
That's an easy answer.
Yeah.
If we don't need it, we won't levy for it.
I don't know the FAQs that go along with this, but that's what Melissa and potentially the Donovan group,
Yeah.
will all be able to weigh in on, are the community information sessions, the mailers and the FAQs are all gonna be key to that. My only other edit is, can we pre-check the yes box?
I like that.
Make them have to.
That's
cross it
the
out.
default.
I like that. 100% of the community said.
We can pre-check it, but they're gonna
I
have
mean,
facility.
I can double check, but I think we're not gonna be able to do
We
it.
can't do that.
Right.
Okay.
I can double check, Brett. I wouldn't want to assume any answer that the attorney might give us, but
Okay.
I'm thinking that probably gonna be no.
I would love for you to ask the attorney just to see the look on their face.
I do not want to pay the attorney just to see the look on their face.
Any further discussion that you guys want to have on this tonight? I mean, do we add instructional in? Do we keep it the way it is? Do we want to just wait till December, talk about it again? Stew on it for a minute, talk about it in December maybe? Why don't we add this to December's?
When does the board have to ratify this?
At the December board meeting, they would have to have final language. And so the sooner, like, if you guys don't see a problem with this, and
Monday's agenda, is it not?
and at Monday's board meeting, you guys, give the direction for the intent, then we will work towards, finalizing the ballot language. That will go to you as a final draft copy, not as a sample copy, but a final draft copy. And then, if you say yes to that, right, it will come to the board. If you say, we still have, some small whatever, then Sarah will work with Quarles to do the small whatever and hopefully get it to the board at the December meeting. If you're still having consternation, we're gonna have to have a special board meeting in the beginning of January to finalize language before the 70-day window comes up. And the 70-day window comes up before our regularly scheduled board meeting in January. I just want you guys to be aware of that. So really, we're hoping that we get this ballot language finalized by December's board meeting, because that will make it easier and no more meetings that we have to try to squeeze in.
Craig?
Mr. Chair, I think that, this committee can make a recommendation to have this before the Monday's agenda. I think we should commit to the language as a recommendation now. And then if at Monday's meeting, somebody decides that it needs to be changed for whatever reason, then they can. It just makes more sense that we, whether we kick it down the road or not, we're talking over one word.
Yeah.
You know,
Fred, I saw your hand kind of go.
With everything that's being discussed on Monday, I don't want to give the perception that we're slipping this in. Because everybody's paying attention over here with the other discussions that are going on. And by the way, we're gonna slide in here this referendum question. Knowing that we can have that discussion in December. I mean, and I know that's not our intent.
Yeah.
But I don't wanna have that perception.
You know, for timeline, we've already tentatively moved the state report card from November to December because there's no time critical aspect of it. Sure, it's something we've traditionally seen in the month of November because that's when the state allows you guys to tell us about it, or you guys to tell us about it, because the board doesn't get to see it before then, although you guys get a look behind the curtain in October, I think. So I've already agreed to move that one just from a full agenda. Due to the timing on this one, I thought it best to leave it on there. It's after any other major discussion, but I think due to timing, it has to stay.
Yeah, I'm ambivalent on keeping it or not. I just don't wanna say, you know, here, well, you had this referendum question, you slipped in because everybody wasn't being intentional.
Well, and right now, yeah,
Right
right
now,
now,
it's
it's
just
just
the
the intent, not the language of
Right.
the.
It's not
of the
gets moved to
question.
December.
Yeah, that's what I mean, yeah.
I mean, so I guess what I'm trying to hear you say, you're not necessarily talking about making a final decision on the intent to go. You're just saying, I don't think we should finalize any ballot language.
Correct.
And I think what I'm hearing Craig say is, in order for us to really coalesce around the intent, having the sample language that is from the committee forward will help that discussion on what is our intent to go for referendum, and are we all on the same page that we have this intent and we are asking, not only are we notifying our community of the intent, but we're also asking Sarah to codify this by drafting final ballot language that would be reviewed at fiscal and then come to us in December. And that's what I heard Craig say, like, we should have this come forward.
Good enough to have it as an example of the language, and then we'll finalize the language in December.
that's fine. I just, at this point in time, I'm looking at it like, we don't really need to have another discussion over one word.
No, I don't disagree.
You know, it's just,
Do we, so, I mean, I guess the question still stands then, do we wanna bring final language to Monday's meeting, or do we wanna?
No,
bring
you
final
notice
language
on.
To December?
We have to
You've
do
noticed.
intent on Monday's meeting.
Intent, sorry.
Intent on Monday.
Yeah.
Intent is on Monday.
Yeah, intent.
But I still think we should attach the sample
course.
language, right, to
Gotcha.
that discussion,
Gotcha.
right?
And that's
say,
not, and again, that's for strategic discussion, not for resolution.
there will be a separate resolution on the intent,
Okay.
But not the language.
but not the language.
Got it.
No,
Okay.
it'll say, you know, the WUSD intends to go to referendum in April for blah, 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 blah.
Got it.
You know, and then, you know, in December, you'll have ballot language that has to pass.
Is everybody understanding and in agreement?
I don't want to muddy the waters, but I did pull a few of the ballot language questions from other districts that just went to referendum. I could bring those in December.
Like that.
All right, moving to the Roffers report.
It's a long report, and we kind of put it in here as a preview. Because Roffers will attend the meeting on Monday and they're going to give a presentation on the whole report. But I thought I would just hit a couple of highlights or things that I sort of thought were highlights out of this report. One thing is, I think we already know this, but housing growth has been pretty stagnant for the last decade in the district. For various reasons, but now Roffers is saying, you know, we've got these developments that are in the works, and so there's some new housing that's being developed here. The other interesting thing that I thought was that the only population growth that the district's seen in like the last decade has been in the age group of 65 and plus. So obviously that doesn't come with many new kids. And that there are currently as many residents in the district that are over age 65 as there are K to 12 age students. I thought that was a pretty interesting statistic as well. So enrollment overall is projected to continue declining in the upcoming years, with the potential around 2035 and going into the 2040s of leveling off and then eventually even growing a little bit is at the elementary level. So as these new houses become available, as the older residents, would they say move on in this report, more students may be moving into the district. And so maybe by 2040, enrollment should be leveled off and maybe starting to grow again at the elementary level.
Just a reminder, I won't be here in 2040.
Say that now.
No, I will retire before that.
You've definitely got another
That's
30 years
16 more
left.
years.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm gonna be here 16 more years.
College is expensive.
Yeah.
Not that expensive.
Any other highlights? Cause this is really informational only right now, correct?
That, and I think that was the only thing I was really just going to say for tonight. I think that that kind of informs us in our facilities planning of we're probably on the right track overall, and what we're seeing is not, it's not unexpected, and it's not uncommon for Wisconsin in general.
And Roffers on Monday will go into a lot more detail, you know, about how they did their study and, you know, the things that they are highlighting from that study, but.
Can I, as, I guess the guy who has to set the agenda for Monday, and I'd like to take it from this team right here. I love Sarah's update. I don't want it to be a PRA update. Okay, we are not gonna spend 30 minutes on this document.
No, I
Okay,
believe
okay, so I mean, Jared or Sarah, can you direct them to 10 minutes or less?
Yeah,
Because they're gonna
we
wanna
already
talk,
have.
Oh, you
they're
did.
gonna
Okay.
wanna talk every single page in a 65-page document.
Yes.
Unless somebody in this room thinks that we need to hear more as a full board on Monday night,
And we know
let me
that they
know
can.
now, but I want them to, they can't be long-winded at the podium on this topic.
Right.
There's just too much data in here that comes to the same conclusion.
Yeah.
We're not growing, and this is what we predict, okay?
And I know they can because they did what, about an 8-minute overview for us as an admin team?
It was fast. It was pretty fast.
Yeah.
I don't know what they're planning for the board meeting.
Okay, please, unless Mike or anybody else on the fiscal committee wants to hear more meat in this, or thinks the other board members who aren't in attendance need to hear things out of their mouths that aren't in this report, I'd like to keep that to, you know, I'll say 10 minutes, but you know that just means 15 to 20. So I just be direct with Robbers.
As long as we go in great detail on page 46, I'm pretty much.
Yeah, what was it, page 46?
I'm not even positive, I just threw that out.
Yeah,
Uh,
there's a lot of fine print.
it's-
So
So go to page 46.
Yeah.
Just to see, yeah, no, I'm curious.
in the same way that we had the referendum planning facilities update at the last board meeting. I obviously I haven't seen the agenda for next week yet. It's just a map.
Yeah, I said, I just,
Would it be possible if these guys, I don't know if these guys are the only people who are gonna be giving us an update or they're gonna be giving us a presentation, would it be possible for us to put this at the beginning of the meeting so that there's less pressure on people who might attend and might wanna talk, so that that doesn't get kind of impacted?
So if we do that, you lose the ability to have discussion about it.
Sure, that makes sense.
Cause it will be an informational update, right? It'll be an informational presentation. We've done that where the Health Foundation has come in. I just want to give you an informational update. Thank you. Have a nice day.
Sure.
Right? And we can do that. But if you want discussion, it should be in our strategic discussion.
What do you want to discuss on this, by the way? Or what do you think we might discuss? I like Sam's suggestion. I'm just asking. What do you?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I actually made the same discussion point with reference to the agenda.
Mhm.
But the question is are people gonna wanna talk about it?
If we put in the strategic discussion section, or we could put it first in the strategic discussion section, there's two
It
things there, well.
Right now, in the draft, it is.
There is, we have the point, we have the ability to have discussion on it, and it allows the raw first people to leave after, they're done, they don't have to sit
Yeah,
there
I
for 2 hours.
don't, I just don't want to, it's not to say there's not good information here, but there's not, to my knowledge, actionable information.
Exactly.
Good way of putting it.
In which case, it's a nice presentation grade, but we all know you're not supposed to give out a 65-page presentation. You're supposed to give out a 4-page presentation with supporting documents. So this is certainly part of the content in the board docs, but that's not the presentation that will go up on the board. It should be conclusions and read to your heart's content. I don't need to know how they went through the process or what their credentials are. And that's, yeah, so just be cautious on that one, yes.
Craig?
But
Did they ever come out and say like where potentially these are already period two? How?
It's not necessarily departing, it's not, there's not growth, so people aren't moving in. And then the age demographics have just shifted and birth rates have fallen.
And
it's
so
kind of
eventually
like a
you're gonna have
trifecta.
open houses.
Basically, we don't have enough housing for younger people to move into who are childbirth, child age, birth age. And so as people age in place, if there's no place for them to move, they move to surrounding areas, they don't move here, is basically what they're doing.
Okay.
And there does look to be some growth over the next 5 to 10 years in the southwest quadrant of our school district. Proposed growth. But again, they don't see an impact of that growth until 2040-ish.
Any further questions on this document? Seeing none, we're gonna move to monthly reports. I didn't see any questions come in on anything this month, but did anybody have questions? Or Sarah, did you wanna highlight anything?
I don't think I had anything to highlight. We did provide the variance report by building. And that's really the only new thing. We might need to just sit down then and figure that out because we're not getting it.
I'm interested in that discussion as well.
Okay,
So if there's a time where the three of us, so say you can do it twice. Or, but it's not because I doubt Craig's ability to ask the question. I'm interested in the answer as well.
I can just send out an email that has a couple proposed dates and times. Does that work?
That's good. That'd be great. Yeah, I'm interested in the process.
We'll keep going until we can meet you guys' needs. I mean, that's all you have to do.
Yes, and hey, for all we know, it's in here. I just need a spot to be directed to it. So just to be fluent in these documents. I'm not fluent in these documents. And we know that your $500,000 reduction in next year's budget is baked in here somewhere. That's part
It
of.
will be.
Well, that's my point.
For next year's budget.
Will be, and knowing how, when you say $500,000, I want to see how that, rolls into these documents. And might be what Craig's asking, might be a different question, but that's kind of what I was interested in, is how that manifests itself in the budgeting.
Yeah, I also wanna, I remind you guys that when I say a $500,000 reduction, we truly are going to reduce what the end budget would have been by 500,000, but you can't look at this year's number and say, I'm going 500,000 less, because remember, there's a lot of expenses that are gonna go up.
It's not like,
But I caution that because some people think that means a $500,000 less than this year's budget was. That's not what I'm saying.
Well, we'll learn that too. But what I won't ask, Sarah, is why do you spend this much on fuel? Okay, I'm not gonna do that. That's not my question. My question is what's in here? How do we control that? If we wanted to reduce it, how would we go about doing it? In understanding the process to see what levers are in here and which ones aren't. You know, because salaries were already agreed to,
Right.
so that's a lever you can't pull. And
Sounds good.
Any further,
thanks. That's what
any further questions or?
you told me what the fuel was for.
Well, yeah.
I had something I forgot, so. sorry about that.
That's okay. I saw you stumble there for a second and, I wasn't sure if you were starting your truck or if you were stumbling.
Well, right,
I'm drawing like, no, next week.
Okay, no problems. So we can move that forward then, is what I'm hearing out there. If we look at, the future calendar real quick. Next month is a little bit later of a month. Generally, I will talk about the capital improvement plan. We're gonna talk about, language, in the referendum. Is there anything else that you guys see should be added to next month's, other than the regular every month stuff? All right, hearing nothing, we'll keep it at that. So then I guess the next step is to go into closed session. I'm looking for, we got a motion? Second, all in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Roll call in that?
Yeah, do I have to roll call that committee?
so.
Aye. That being said, our next meeting date is Wednesday, December 11th. Dave, I brought up action items. I think out of this meeting, the only action items we really had kind of came out of the referendum planning discussion, right? Where we're gonna bring back some language stuff in December.
Yeah.
And then paying the bills, right? Did I miss anything from anybody?
Yes, you did. You missed, that, there's a calendar request going out to different members to have a discussion on building budgets and what that might look like for information moving forward. Thank you.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Thank you.
Motion adjourned.
All right. We are.
Make sure that you guys
set
have
to adjourn.
this.
Get pushed anywhere.
Yeah, that's oh, yeah,
Yeah.
from the action item from closed session as well.
Yeah, that's what he said, the action item from closed session, which was to approve the recommendation from the committee.
Yeah, like off the record, are we recording or we don't?
One sec.
Well,